That's right. We are back. Well, welcome into episode 23. Is that right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
Probably.
that sounds right.
Yeah,
Episode 23 of the Why Ball Starters podcast. The three of us are back, and we haven't been on for about 5 weeks. So today we are going to get to a talk about the Blazers 2021 offseason. No, we did not get Giannis or Ben Simmons or Jimmy Butler or anything like that. Are we going to win a championship? No, probably not. Did we improve? Probably by like 2 wins. We'll get to it. But we've been gone for like over a month. Why? There's just been so much going on. I know I myself have been just kind of going around the world, first to Lake Chelan, to Seattle, to the Lincoln County Fair, to where I live. Just covering really the whole globe there. What have you guys been up to?
Really traveling the world there, Drew. Wow, that's quite expansive.
That's a lot of real. I'm surprised you didn't go over the edge at any point.
Yeah, it's true. As we all know, the Earth is flat.
Yes. Why ball starter theory 101.
Well, I've been up to making coffee per usual, but not for much longer. I got a new job, so
I don't even know about this.
It's crazy.
That's because you didn't listen to the audio message last night, Kendall.
That's true. I sent you a long audio message.
Oh, I thought it was just gonna be about like your computer not working. So I didn't even look at it.
It looks like you should have listened.
I will have to listen to this and get caught up because I don't even know what you're talking about at the moment.
John, for the listeners at home and for the Kendall listening at home, what is your new job? I bet it's really exciting.
It is. I will be coordinating jobs from companies like for temp to hire. So getting people jobs. So you could say I'm a hero. And when I get them jobs, they will, not them, I guess, but the companies will pay me money, which is why I do what I do, so I can get paid.
Wow. So you don't necessarily do it for the love of the job, but more for the money.
I'm still a hero. I still do it.
And we don't even know if he's going to love the job or not. Maybe it'll be his calling and his passion, and he'll do it for 70 years.
Honestly,
our generation's not going to be able to retire.
No,
that's true.
I mean, if we could put up a poll question right now, actually, just in the comments below, vote, will John love his job in 6 months? And we'll check back. Yes or no. Just vote in the comments.
When we're on episode 50, the Phoenix Suns
or at this rate,
the
26
second round with Casey Benson.
Was that 2024? He's like taking the Mike James route to the NBA.
Yeah, Casey Benson going to the NBA. You've heard it here first. Kendall, what have you been up to?
Well, I have clearly not been listening to messages or paying attention to you guys. I have been currently grinding, trying to finish up my college degree from the online University of Arizona State. And I'm currently about three weeks away, I want to say. So as long as everything goes good for the rest of this time, I too soon shall be exiting from the land of coffee and continuing my career. Not exactly sure what yet. Don't have quite a job lined up, but that's probably something that I need to get figured out here soon. And
put a potential hero in the making.
What was that?
Full-time Y-ball starters, obviously.
Yeah, full-time Y-ball starters. Yeah, because I mean, we didn't put it on the back burner at all for the last month.
No. We've just been so busy, and we knew this was going to be our best episode yet. So we knew people would wait for us.
Well, in fact, Kendall, we were waiting for you to accept this opportunity, and that's why we're offering it to you live on air. So you can't deny it.
Am I your
first?
Am I your first job? Am I your first hire, John?
Yes.
Wow.
The company I'm working for is the Y Ball Starters, and we were trying to get you a job. We heard you guys soon have a college degree.
Our HR department's really growing. I mean, you know what they say, it takes two to make a team.
It's true. We here at the Y Ball Starters are only 97 employees away from mandating the vaccine.
Yes.
And yeah, in terms of myself, I mean, I'm getting married, so that's one thing on the back burner for me.
Who
At the same time,
cares?
yeah. I don't know. At the same time, I continue my lucrative, money-filled career as a journalist in Davenport, Washington. Tonight, I was at a soccer game. Davenport won over Reardon 2-1. So that's a Northeast 2B score update for all you guys. So that's pretty much what I've been up to. Getting my apartment ready for my wife to live here soon, I suppose. Other than that, not much going on.
I mean, Drew, let's be honest. What all do you need to do to the apartment over like 7 months out for your wife to move in?
She's going to do that all herself. I just have to be there.
Well, I know, but you were saying like you're getting ready for your wife to move in, or your soon-to-be wife, but it's still 7 months
I figured
out.
that it would be understood that that's not actually me doing that. That's just me kind of sitting and letting it happen.
Yeah.
We cannot understand. Can you help us understand?
Yes, let's go talk about this for the next 20 minutes. Now we'll get in.
I'm sure that's what the listeners want to
know. Well, the Blazers kind of got back into workouts today. Looks like they went to a high school football field and played some pigskin to celebrate the return of the NFL. Training camp coming up soon. Obviously, it is September, and then we're about a little over a month away from the regular season starting. To kind of break down the offseason a little bit, Portland retained Norman Powell, and they added Larry Nance Jr. was their marquee addition, which, yeah, okay. Good. He's a
star alert.
Great role player. Don't get me wrong. Like, that was a good pickup. I don't know about him being the best player we got, although re-signing Norman Powell was a big deal. Portland also signed Cody Zeller, Ben McLemore, drafted Greg Brown, signed Trendon Watford to a two-way contract, signed Tony Snell, and signed non-guaranteed deals with Dennis Smith Jr. and Marquise Chris. Portland
and Patrick Patterson.
And Patrick Patterson. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good pickup, actually.
And Portland lost either via free agency or trade Zach Collins, Carmelo Anthony, Enes Kanter, Derek Jones Jr., and Harry Giles. So I'll start off by asking you guys, I think Nance or Powell is probably our favorite move collectively that Portland made. But for you guys, what moves really stood out to you this offseason?
I think when you're first looking, the first move that I think is the biggest difference is Chauncey Billups becoming the head coach and the change of coaching staff. Because I think that's what's going to change the team more than obviously the moves are very, very like they changed the bench. It's this exact same starting lineup. So what's going to matter more is the schemes they play, both on offense and defense. I think the offense has opportunity to help the defense a lot more. They scored a lot, but a lot of times it was trying to keep up with teams. And so now with different schemes, hopefully they can kind of keep the ball rolling on offense, protect the ball a little better, be more consistent, and not have as many shots lead to long breakouts, because that's where a lot of their defensive struggles are. They're just an older team, and when younger teams are out in the break and it's 3-on-2, I mean, 2 old dudes versus 3 22-year-olds, I mean, what are you going to do? So so far as defensive schemes as well, I'd like to see a difference, but I think there's going to be a lot of difference first in the coaching.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with John on that. Just seeing how Chauncey Billups changes up the offense. He's already talked about how we took way too many threes over the past few years. Well, essentially insinuated that and talked about how he's wanting to get away from that, more ball movement, sharing the ball, scheming. And yeah, like John said, ultimately better shot selection is going to lead to less of those fast break opportunities. Yeah. And he's absolutely right. That's why we struggled with any sort of younger team or any team that had athleticism on us. Is we just aren't an athletic team. Even when Dame and CJ were younger, they've never been elite, just like athletes. They're more skill based. They more rely on their craft to get them. I mean, that's what their profession is based off. Yeah. So having a coach who takes their strengths and I think plays to that a bit more, I think that should really help us. Now, we haven't seen Chauncey, be a head coach before, so jury still is out for now, but I'm excited for the move. And yeah, I think that would be our biggest move this offseason, that along with retaining Norman Powell.
I agree. And I think one way that you could create kind of a new player out of this potential new head coaching system is the player that outside of Damian Lillard is and really has been the most important player on the team for the past 4 years, probably, is Jusuf Nurkic. It wasn't much of a secret that Jusuf Nurkic was not happy at the end of the season. He's always been a more emotional guy. Obviously, he's had some really sucky stuff happen in his personal life in the last couple of years. And we've seen the potential for Nurkic to be a top 5 center, but we have not seen it consistently. We've seen him be an elite defender, but we have not seen that consistently where he's gotten in foul trouble. We saw that a lot in the playoffs, obviously, against Denver. And Chauncey Billups, one of the first things he said when he was made available to the media as head coach was talking about getting Jusuf Nurkic more involved in the offense and running that more through him. The key is still going to be health for him. Nurkic obviously has had some injuries, missed time in the last couple of years. And Larry Nance is another guy that is a good pickup, but he's also somewhat injury prone. I believe it's in the last 3 years, Nance hasn't played more than 67 games in a full 82 game season. So health is still going to be paramount for Portland this coming season. Other than that, the pieces that Portland got are pretty ho-hum. I mean, Cody Zeller is probably the best, honestly, outside of Nance among new players. Just being a solid defensive center that could start if Nurkic goes down. It would not be optimal if Zeller was starting with Nurkic out for an extended period of time, but I wouldn't expect McLemore or Tony Snell to play that much. What's kind of the ceiling, you guys think? Because I would say Portland got better, but not much better.
It's really hard to tell. You almost have to see how the coaching is, because we have no idea how good Chauncey is. Because, I mean, having Brooks there is really helpful, someone that's coaching even the NBA Finals. And if he really can implement good defensive schemes and find a way to not just run Jusuf Nurkic into bodies the entire game, then, like, I mean, their ceiling could be pretty high just because their leader, like with Lillard down the stretch in playoff games, I mean, you're really comfortable. And so you really feel that if you're in the game down the stretch in playoff games, that Lillard's going to get you there. It's just getting to that situation. But if they can really, like, bulk up defensively, then, like, they really got a shot. It's just, I mean, they just aren't big enough, though. It doesn't seem like, unless they're not going to be playing like the Lakers, or like the Nets or like the Bucks. But I mean, if you're wanting to go far in the playoffs, you are. Like, they still have no one. Like, who are they? They're going to put Covington on Giannis, right? Like, they would have to, but he's giving up a good 5 inches to Giannis. So it's like, I don't know. It seems like more of the same, but it's really hard to tell just because maybe Chauncey just knows schemes that are going to help with that. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, the team's definitely still small. There's no arguing about that. I mean, when your projected starting lineup includes Dame, CJ, and Norm all in there, I mean, we're going to run into some problems that we just ran into, that we saw in the playoffs against Denver. I don't know how much scheming with Chauncey will help with that or not. It'll be interesting to see. But I do think me and Drew were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, having Norm in now for a full season, full off season, that's going to help, I think, to some degree, having a new coach, a new mindset. I do think that Larry Nance pickup might be undervaluing it a little bit. I think that he's a really good player just from what I've seen, the way that he's based, like kind of Draymond Green-esque in a lot of ways, I think is really going to help the offense out, especially if Chauncey can keep Nurk involved, get Nurk playing more dynamically along his strengths, and not having Dame and CJ always, trapped up so high near half court. I think that Nance has a lot to be taken advantage of. He's a really good roller off screens. He's good at finding cutters. I just think that there's a lot that he's going to do well for us. So offensively, I actually think that we could be better than we were last year, at least more efficient. Defense, though, could still be a problem. But I do think Nance helps there too, though. I mean, Nance was a guy who was, going for all pro for a little bit before he got hurt. So
yeah, and if you look up like highlights online, he honestly reminds me a lot of like kind of a combination between like Draymond and then Andre Iguodala. He is really good at jumping passing lanes. And Portland never has those players, or just their scheme hasn't allowed. They don't ever take chances to passing lane. So I think like Nance, like he's a good offensive player. He's very solid well around. I think he really helps defensively because having Covington out there, he's really good at taking small chances, but then having Nance out there to take big chances too is going to be really helpful.
I think Nance too is going to be our best one-on-one defender from everything that I've heard.
He's super athletic. Yeah.
It's also going to be about, this goes back to Chauncey, but the lineups he's willing to play and the chances he's willing to take. Because Portland could put out a lineup of Dame, Powell, Covington, Nance, and Nurkic, and that is really solid defensively. You can hide Damian Lillard, who Dame has never been a good defender, but if he was surrounded by good defenders, you can hide him to the point where he's very much serviceable.
And he's not bad. I mean, he kind of is what he is for his size. I mean, because he's not super like laterally quick, he kind of has to guard up. And I mean, when he's 6 foot on like Kevin, or not, I guess not on Kevin Durant, but like on like Michael Porter Jr. I mean, there's only so much you can do. So, but if you can completely hide him altogether, because they've been having to try to hide both him and CJ McCollum, and they really have to hide CJ McCollum, or at least they have been.
I really think that, I mean, it'll never happen or at least we don't think so, just because of his big contract and whatnot. I really think the move is if we can make CJ McCollum into the Manu Ginobili, Jamal Crawford elite sixth man and bring him in there to close the game too, especially if it's a game where we need offense. There is still there's been so much talk about, trade CJ. He had a really disappointing playoffs. And in the right situation, I would 100% agree with a CJ McCollum trade. But if that's not going to happen, I think bringing him off the bench would actually make a pretty big difference, because there is still value to that kind of player, a guy who can go get a bucket, especially when the offense is stalling. But having two of those guys in the starting lineup has just always really limited Portland's ability when they go up against teams like John was talking about with a lot of length. If he was willing to take a off the bench starter role, so like what Manu Ginobili did in San Antonio, and then they were able to start Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard, which Robert Covington and Norman Powell are a very poor man's version of, but Powell's only improving and Covington is what he is. He's a good role player. I think that would make Portland a much better team. Another big key, this is something Kendall and I were talking about recently, is Nasir Little. If Nasir Little becomes an above average to very good wing, I think that drastically changes Portland's outlook. What do you think, Kendall?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. It absolutely does. I think you mentioned a little earlier that you didn't think Tony Snell was going to get a lot of playing minutes. He could potentially still get some playing time. I think that to start out the year, I think we're going to see Nas and Snell be battling out those minutes for small forward time, for backup minutes at least. And if Nas can be a bit more consistent with his defensive IQ, he's got the abilities, he's got the physical talent to be a good defender. But he always seemed to a couple steps behind. So hopefully having a new coach, a new system will help with that, as well as just player development as well. And the other thing Nas showed last year was shooting. I mean, you don't just go off for 30 points, even though a lot of it was in garbage time, if you don't have skill. I mean, he showed that on multiple occasions too, where his shot had really improved. So if you can get that with more consistency, Nas has the type of potential to the point where he could possibly be the difference. If you can get 15 solid minutes from Nas, that raises our ceiling. Like it just flat out does, because that's the point. That's the position of need right there. And if Nas can kind of fill in for that, that kind of changes the outlook of our season to some degree, as funny as it sounds.
Well, I almost wonder if if his improvement would create a situation where Portland might actually be more willing to make a swing at a big trade. Because as great of a role player as he is, Nas Little becoming a really good player does make Covington more expendable. And Covington is a very valuable championship piece in the right system. So there could be a team that is looking to trade a star that might become more inclined, that Portland might be more inclined to offer both a CJ McCollum and a Nas Little and picks for, or a Covington for. I think it not only does that just help make Portland a better team on paper as the roster presently is, it does also potentially enhance trade values just within the roster itself, because I'm not convinced CJ McCollum is going to have that much trade value on his own, actually.
No, and I think just looking at championship winning teams, not always, but typically they just have a ton of good wings they throw at you. And so even just not even thinking about trading wise, like Nas Little breaking out is huge, just because when you have injuries or foul trouble, you're just rotating good wings. I mean, this year he was going to play in the summer league, and the coaching staff said he was too good to play in the summer league, which is a thing you like almost never hear. Which is, I mean, you would assume a good sign. I've personally can't remember any other time hearing that, but
No.
So I mean, hopefully that's a good sign. I mean, he really showed a lot. His first year, I remember he looked athletic and like nothing else. He didn't look like he had a lot of skills. But last year, when he like actually was getting into the flow of the games that he was in, so like playing more than like 3 minutes, like he really looked solid. He was guarding his man really well. He's super, super long. And he's looking really confident. You would even dribble in and create for himself. Which I was really surprised to see. So I mean, I think he has a relatively high ceiling. He was a super high prospect. He just kind of was lazy in college. But obviously not anymore. He obviously has been putting in work. So I mean, it's encouraging, but I think him becoming good increases a ton of options, because then you have guys like Snell, who's not that bad, not even seeing minutes, or guys like McLemore, who again, isn't that bad at all, like not seeing minutes as well, which just keeps increasing the ceiling of your team.
It does. And I think a lot of it too, Little has been behind players at his position that were preventing him from getting minutes, who contributed, like a Carmelo Anthony or even a Covington.
Or Covington, yeah.
And obviously we chose to play Mario Hezonja minutes.
It's a good idea.
So I think a lot of times the old Terry Stotts way was in your third year, you would start to see players become serviceable players. Jake Layman, Pat Connaughton, guys like
Anthony
that. Anthony Simons, yes. Under Chauncey, it's going to be a different story, but this is Nas's third year, which is a very make or break year in a lot of ways, even when your coach is not Terry Stotts. You would assume there's going to be more asked of Nas, even though he will still be a bench player. Now, absolutely best case scenario, if he can push to the point where he's threatening for starter minutes, that is a very big deal. Or if he can become the type of player where you just saw how many good wings Phoenix had.
Yeah.
If Nas can become like one of those types of players, that just helps Portland so much. Because then you could even go back to, do you get crazy and bring Covington off the bench, or are Covington and Little playing the same amount of minutes and it doesn't matter who you start? Covington, Nance, and Little become interchangeable depending on the matchup. If we need to go small, we can do that. You got Norman Powell in that too with his long wingspan, even though he's shorter. I think a big key really for Portland this year is the development of Nasir Little. How about Anthony Simons? What's kind of the ceiling you guys see? Because he's going to be a really important bench player this year, no matter what.
Yeah, Anthony's interesting. I kind of think to some degree the skills that he showed last year. I kind of have a feeling that's what we're going to see this year. Now, how much does he improve on those skills, like those specific set, and just become better at it? He was a super efficient 3-point shooter. And guy, it's slipping my mind right now. I think it was catch and shoot 3-point percentage. He was one of the top in the NBA, right?
Yeah, I think, and even overall, I think he was like 42 or 43%.
Yeah, overall he was really good, but I think it was that catch and shoot specifically that he was like in the top 90 something percentile. It was one of the best in the league. And he just didn't really get a lot of those because of the way that our offense was between Dame, CJ, Carmelo. There just weren't those opportunities a whole lot to get those catch and shoot. I mean, Covington actually got quite a few catch and shoot opportunities last year. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but just watching him play. So hopefully Billups utilizes the offense to the point where Simons is getting more of those catch and shoot opportunities. I would also like to see Simons drive more. He started doing that a little bit last year, and he's clearly got the athleticism and skill to make it happen. He needs to become better at finishing and also finding his spot a little bit better, because sometimes it looked like he was just driving in just to drive in with no certain end goal necessarily. So just seeing him become more confident inside. But yeah, if he can improve upon his skill, become, have a little bit of a higher volume from outside, as well as become a bit more consistent with his drives going inside, and see him pass a bit better in his drives, like kickouts and stuff. He could be a really valuable player as well. Him and Nas could definitely raise our ceiling this year.
He's kind of an interesting player to me. What's unfortunate is I think we're not a good situation for his development, because we desperately need him to be a point guard, and he just isn't. Like, he's not a point guard. He kind of reminds me of when Jordan Clarkson was on Cleveland, where it's like, this player's good, and Jordan Clarkson on Cleveland like sucked, and Anthony Simons is has been very efficient and good. But it's just like you're watching them and you're like, it is like it's not the right role. But that being said, so that's why I agree. Anthony, in Portland system, would need to really develop his driving game, his ability to work off pick and rolls, and some DHOs, a little more, being more than the catch and shoot, because we know like Rick really is good at catch and shoot now. And I really think he can create for himself too. So, I mean, I think the role's going to get bigger, because now off the bench, they're going to need someone to kind of run things. And assuming, unless they stagger Dame and CJ completely like they have done, it's very weird. I really haven't understood why we haven't gotten a backup point guard in the last like 4 seasons.
It's CJ McCollum.
Yeah,
it's so bizarre.
And now Anthony Simons.
When like one of them gets hurt, then we just literally don't have a backup. But it's interesting where he's going to have to develop more into a point guard if we're going to want to be successful in the playoffs, though. Like, it's just, he will have to be a point guard, like, for us to be able to do it.
So kind of looking at Portland's bench, even though we don't think it should be this way, just because of the way the roster is, we're assuming the starting lineup, at least to start, fully healthy, will be Lillard, McCollum, Powell, Covington, and Nurkic. You'd be looking at a bench, and again, we don't know what Chauncey's like, if he's a 9-man, 8-man, 10-man, what his deal is. Stotts was a 9-man and then would shrink it a little bit for the playoffs. Being conservative and calling it a 9-man rotation, you'd be looking at Simons, Little, Zeller for sure. And then from there, it gets a little interesting. I would expect Tony Snell to get minutes over Ben McLemore, just because he's a little bigger, and that fits Portland's need a little better. McLemore does...
Yeah, I don't think you put Nance in there. You did Zeller, Simons, and Little.
Zeller, Simons, Little, and Zeller. Nance.
So that's 9 right there. So, I mean, if it's a 9, it would be that. I would assume
well,
it's bigger,
do you think Naz is going to get time over Snell?
I bet training camp's big for that, to be honest.
Yeah. Preseason's going to be interesting to watch with that.
I also think it's possible Chauncey wants to start off with a 10-man and play both Snell and Little. However, if he wants to do a 10-man, does that open the door potentially for a Greg Brown or one of the 3 non-guaranteed guys, Dennis Smith Jr., Marquise Chris, Patrick Patterson, of whom I would think Patrick Patterson has the best chance to make the roster personally.
I would assume, yeah.
I actually think Chris could be possibly the one to make the roster. He played pretty decent in Golden State before he got hurt.
And it's funny how we talk about Portland never having a backup point guard. That actually is something. If he would have, Dennis Smith Jr. has not played up to his potential. Clearly, he's like hardly in the league, and he was a top pick.
Yeah,
but
which is odd because he also had a good season in the NBA, and then has just not been good since. It's very, very odd. I'm really not sure. I guess they just, I'm not sure.
And I'm also operating under the assumption that Ben McLemore is probably not going to play much unless there's an injury or until there's an injury, probably.
Yeah.
But he is another player where, I mean, his position is where we're like loaded up the most is 6'3" guards. But
we do have a lot of those.
He's not a scrub. He's certainly not a scrub.
All.
He can shoot the three. He's a decent defender. He was on a Lakers championship team.
I was going to say I couldn't remember if he was last year or the championship. Yeah.
He was there last year for sure. I'd actually have to double check to make sure he's on the championship.
No, he was on.
I'm pretty
Houston.
sure he was.
He was on Houston, their championship year.
Oh, you're right.
You know what? You're right.
You're right. Yep.
Yeah.
But he had a role.
And he was good on Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
And Greg Brown, I think, has some potential. He probably won't play much this year.
Not this year, but man, he is crazy athletic.
Yeah,
it's funny, John, that you say that you mentioned, John, that we're not much of an athletic team, which is true in a lot of the starting lineup, but I guess our important players.
That is true. Our starters aren't super athletic because off our bench, we do have Simons, reigning dunk champ. We have Nance, who's a super athlete, Greg Brown, Nazir Little's, not a scrub at all.
Nazir Little's pretty athletic,
yeah.
And of course, the best athlete
Cody
on the
Zeller.
team, Cody Zeller. Hey,
Cody, let's go.
The bald mamba after Caruso.
No, if Greg Brown can become defensive stopper and good this year, then we might have.
I don't think that's too unrealistic, honestly.
I would say he could do it.
Do you guys think this team is good enough to keep Damian Lillard?
I would say if it's
what do you think Damian Lillard's standards are?
Personality, external factors. The way he was talking made it seem like he's giving them one more chance to win and then one out. Unless it's just being misread and he's just trying to actually motivate them and he's not trying to get out. Because he has not taught, outside of trying to light the fire, seemingly he has not really talked about asking a trade. Everything has been external.
Yeah.
So I really don't even know if he even is considering leaving. It's really hard to tell, to be honest. Just because all of the reports of him wanting to leave are not even from local news. And they're from
it's national.
It's all like New York, and it's like, how would you know?
Wait, are you saying Stephen A. Smith doesn't know?
Yeah. You
crazy.
are completely right, John. Lillard is at the point now where it's not impossible that a national media could get it first, because he at this point, Lillard is a global superstar.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, until you start hearing Jason Quick or Chris Haynes, who's good friends with Lillard, or even like Casey Holdahl, who I love the guy, but he usually goes back at the scoop first. But once you hear one of those guys start to talk about Lillard probably wanting out, because Dame trusts those guys too. John's right that you can't fully trust it. It does seem like, whether it's just media hype or otherwise, it does seem a little more possible now. Like 2 years ago, it seemed impossible that he would ever want out, even though it made no sense at the time. We're like, how could you not want out?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. How much better do you think Portland got just with present moves?
I definitely think that they're better. Again, a lot of it is we're gonna have to see how Billups plays out the rotation, and also see just how some of his schemes work. And especially some of these guys have been pretty long tenured here, especially the core of our group outside of Covington, this will be his second year in Norm, but like Nurk, Dame, CJ, Anthony, Nas, all those guys, they've been part of the system for quite a while now, quite a few years. So how willing they are to change the way that they've played on their team, especially Damon CJ. That's going to play into the success factor of next year. If we're just off the assumption that Billups is going to be a good coach and implement good schemes, I think just with the personnel moves we made, I think that we did get better. I definitely think we got better. You cannot understate or overstate, I should say, how big of an impact it makes that Carmelo Anthony and Enes Kanter are gone. And replacing them with Cody Zeller.
Wow.
We knew
already the slander. He's been gone for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Right now.
Okay. Would you rather have somebody who, like Larry Nance, who can play both offense and defense, or would
has
you rather
Larry
have
Nance
Carmelo,
scored 20,000 points in the NBA?
I don't know. Maybe he will in Portland. I don't know. He's like, what, 10 years younger than Melo? Actually, no, not quite that much. Isn't he like 27?
That's about right. Melo's 38.
What video is more iconic? The Hoodie Melo highlight tapes or the Bleacher Report edit of Larry Nance dunking when he was in Cleveland, and then inexplicably they photoshopped him into Patrick Starr running back down the court? It's one of the strangest videos. Like, that's one where you're like, what was the person at Bleacher Report on? And the whole team that approved that making it onto their Twitter. I mean, it's a classic video now, but that's kind of what Larry Nance is almost famous for now, is that video.
We should try and get Larry Nance here on the show. I think that'd be a fun one.
Larry, if you're listening, we would love to have you on. We really think you're a great pickup for this team. And I sound sarcastic, but like, I'm serious.
No, he is.
We actually legitimately all believe it's a great pickup.
No, I think that I would be probably a lot more mediocre about and lukewarm with how I feel Portland's going to do this year. I am very high on Larry Nance Jr. I think he's as good of a role player as any other top competing championship team has, to be quite honest. I think he's better than Aaron Gordon.
Yeah. I actually I think for us specifically, yes.
Maybe. Yeah. Ceiling wise, yes.
I would say this. I agree, Kendall. You asked me Monday before the Larry Nance trade how I think this offseason went, and I would give it D. And now I would give it almost a B, to be honest. This is something I've said for a couple of years now, is if there's anyone in the NBA that can do something similar to what Dirk did in 2011 and just
LeBron James,
Larry Nance,
and just carry a like solid team with no other superstars or a championship, I believe it is Lillard. That is the type of guy to do it. They've never had a team that I think is remotely close. I think this team is by far the closest, especially with the coaching change, because the coaching has been very stale the last few years. It's nothing against Stotts. It's the system has run its course with the players, I think. And so I think this team overall is probably mildly better. But I would say that this team actually does have potential to be significantly better for the first time in a long time. So overall, I would say it ended up being good, probably, but it's really hard to tell.
Now, I actually agree with your point there, John, that ceiling wise, I actually do think this team got considerably better just because it's fresh in a lot of ways. There's no position that you look at on Portland where you're like, ugh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positions where, especially wing, where we could get better. Like there is an improvement, but there's none where it's like, oh, that's an obvious weakness. Yeah. Outside of size. Size on the perimeter is still going to be, as long as Damon CJ are the backcourt, they're going to outscore a lot of the time. Another thing that's just so tough is the West is so good. It is so good. I mean, you just go down the list. I mean, Utah's a good team. Good. Now, I think Portland has the potential now to be better than Utah. I think Portland now has the potential to be better than Denver, although Jamal Murray is only getting better.
Jamal Murray's going to be out, though, for a little bit.
He is.
Yeah, he'll be out half a year.
I'm not sold there's the potential that the Lakers are going to be unbeatable next year. There's also the potential that is not going to
They're going to be awful. Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard's probably going to miss most of the season. And Golden State's going to be back. With Steph and Clay.
State's back.
They unfortunately might be title favorites that no one's talking about for some reason.
Yeah.
Like assuming Klay Thompson's remotely close to what he was, like they have,
which jury's still out on that.
Yeah,
Phoenix,
but they have
Ayton
14 playable players.
Ayton and Booker are still getting better. We've probably hit the ceiling with Chris Paul, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Memphis is getting better. I don't think Dallas is getting better personally, but
I think that Luka should just bring a Slovenia team.
Yeah. Apparently. What are some teams you guys think would be the best matchups for Portland? Like a team where you're like, you know what, I think Portland can pass this team that was better than us last year, and some teams where you're like, that's going to be tough.
I definitely think the Nuggets for sure without Jamal Murray there. I think that just with getting a bit of size with Larry Nance and just the depth that we added to, just more well-rounded players. I think we just match up with them better, just flat out. The Clippers, I would also say the Clippers, I think that we could pass up. The Lakers, I'm not sold on yet. I do think at their height, even if their team ends up not being working out, I think at their height would be quite a bit of an issue. Yes. So I don't know if that's a good matchup. Golden State, I'm not sold. The thing is, Curry's getting older. Clay is realistically not going to be a great defender. He still could be okay, but even if he gets his shooting back, he's not going to probably have that agility on defense like he's had in previous seasons. So I kind of want to see how they look before I call them a title favorite necessarily. Who else? I think Memphis could be a dark horse team though. I mean, getting that playoff experience and being another year older, more experienced, I think Memphis could be pretty dang good next year.
I think I honestly think we're probably, I mean, it really depends. I think Utah's hit their ceiling. I can't see them getting any better. So I think we're better than Utah right now. I actually think we're the best team in our division, to be completely honest. We should have beaten Denver in the playoffs last year without all of those defensive deficiencies. The West is really interesting. I unfortunately think the Lakers are probably going to work it out with how much talent they got with veteran minimums. So I mean, and that's about as bad of a matchup possible for us with Westbrook, LeBron, and Davis. Like that freaking sucks, man. So that's a horrible matchup for us. But most of the teams in the West we match up pretty well at. Even teams like Phoenix is not a terrible matchup. Golden State's gonna be tough, just because corralling Curry is still so insane, and his range is somehow just getting more consistent from deep. It's gonna be hard to tell with Thompson, but they're 14 deep with like startable players, so but their roster probably isn't going to be the same when it comes to playoff time. So it's really hard to say. And that being said, I don't think it's super unrealistic that we could be like third, second in the West. I don't think this team could be first, but like winning the division and being a top 3 seed, I don't think is super unrealistic. I mean, we'll see with injuries and with gelling, but I don't think that's unrealistic at all.
Now, one thing I did forget to bring up with Golden State is I wasn't including Kuminga and Moody.
Yeah, Kuminga and Moody are like unstoppable.
So, yeah, if those guys develop really well around Clay and Steph,
and Wiseman too, because Wiseman wasn't even that good last year. They have a lot of players.
Yeah,
but that's a lot of trade bait. A lot of it's like, because I can't imagine they're going to keep all of those young dudes. They're going to try and win a championship.
Yeah, not if they're playing well.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. And we'll be back soon with an NBA preview podcast episode. And we'll see if we can get on someone for that, or it'll just be us 3 and it'll be just as fun. But thanks to everyone who listened and to tune in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on YouTube and Spotify, because we will not be apart for months at a time now. Now that
we'll no longer be on a break.
We will no longer be on a break like Ross and Rachel. Thanks
Sure.
everyone to listen. Again, make sure to like and subscribe and have a great rest of your day, evening, or night.
Peace.
Later.